Okay, so in this video we'll finally now implement OAuth 2 security on our little service. And our service is this employee service where I have a video on I created a video on how to create a service. So this is the object, that we're exposing. We exposing few methods. It's map to /employee. You can get a specific employee in JSON format. You can get a HTML list, or you can get a list in JSON format, or you can delete an employee, or you can post to employee, and meaning you add a new one. So it's add, delete. The put method is for updating, so add, delete, update, and then various ways of getting it. So that's our base service, and in the last video we secured this with a thing called basic security. So basic security, you have to send a username and password, so that's pretty much standard. So in this video though, we're going to try and talk about OAuth. So how it works at the moment is, of course, here's my service, and how it works in Spring is we have this security in front of it, and currently we've implemented basic security, and of course out here is the client. Well, we started with no security whatsoever, and the client could just directly talk to the service. Then we added security in there, and we said okay, and we implemented basic security, and that's now sort of in front of our service. But to do basic security, the user has to send a user name plus password every time. So and that way basic security intercepts it, and it works fine. The disadvantage though is we have to every time send a username and a password, and that's encrypted in the headers. You can look at the previous video for that description. So I did a video before this which is the theory behind OAuth. OAuth almost works the same way. Of course there's still a client, and there's still the our service. But this time we will our security layer will be OAuth, and we'll call it OAuth 2, and that works slightly different. So the client has several states in this case. So we have the actual initial transaction, and that's called authorization grant. And that's sort of a first step, and just to be clear, we will be showing in here OAuth 2 implicit. So this is not standard. I explained in my previous video the OAuth flows, but we'll be dealing with OAuth implicit here. So the first step is the client sends his grant, and then here is the username and password in this request. But note that he's not talking to the service, he's talking to security or OAuth over here, this layer. So he sends his username and his password, and the response back to him is a refresh token. So he will get a refresh token back, and that's the first leg done. So with this refresh token, he can of course create many other tokens. So this is the actual second flow. Then is called the refresh. I'll just call it the refresh loop stage, and then this stage we send that refresh token we just received. The client sends that refresh token, and we have to make it part of that. There we go, refresh token. He sends it, and what he gets back is a access token. So there's a little response here, and he gets back a access token. So that's the second loop. He gets back the access token, and then finally, and let's just call this a transaction loop. Finally, you can do the transaction to the service, providing the, so that's the last part, and then of course the response back to him is, that's the result, the actual transaction result. So there is 3 loops. There's loop number 1 over here, which is the grant. Loop number 2, which is the refresh loop, and then loop number 3, which is the actual transaction loop. So this is a little bit more complicated than basic, but it gives us a very good security. You know, why are we doing this? Of course, we're doing this for security reasons. So you know, first of all, the username and password only travels here once, and the way we implement this can be a separate site or somewhere where you have to go and get authenticated with all sorts of security before you issued a refresh token. Then before you do a transaction, you have to have a refresh token, but let's say this refresh token expires every 90 days. So you know, typically every 90 days you'll have to go back to loop number 1 and go get a new refresh token. So it's not it's nice for your compliance, and with that you get an access token. But let's say an access token only lasts for 10 seconds. So first step then to do a transaction is you send in your refresh loop, you get your access token, and then you have 10 seconds to do your transaction to the service and get the result back. And you know, what's nice is if somebody were to do a capture replay of your transaction over the web here, 10 seconds later, you know, that transaction is no longer valid because, you know, it's changed. The access token has changed by then, and also for your compliance, then you're doing your refresh every 90 days or 24 hours or, you know, 5 years, whatever you decide as a company to implement. It's important to also know that, you know, between these two guys there's also you know, some mechanism for them sharing this access token, so that, you know, by the time you hit the service with the access token, it can validate that it's a valid service. So typically how this is done in side of Spring is, we're not going to touch our service at all. Our service remains the way it is, and that's really our service over here. There's the employee class, and there's the actual service definition. Previously, in the previous video, we implemented basic security over here. So we're going to replace that, and that's really the only file we're going to change, is we're going to replace our security mechanism from being basic, and I'm going to paste in here the OAuth security method. So I'm going to first of all replace that, and we'll see some red come up in here, meaning there's some issues. So, and a reason for that is we need to include the library. So I'm first going to go into project structure. I'm going to add, and I'm going to add this new library, and I just have it on my local machine here, and that's Spring Security OAuth 2, and I'll just do 1.05 release there. And then I'm also going to include these guys with my to my web artifact or my WAR file, so that they are part of that. And I'm going to go OK, and after that we should see most of these errors disappearing. Okay, so I have a little bit of a paste problem there. There we go. Red is now resolved. Most of those errors are gone. My library is installed. So let's look at this file quickly and the definition of it. First of all, there's a definition of my authentication service, and it's going to live at the endpoint OAuth token. And if we go back to this picture, that's this guy, and it lives at /OAuth/token. So that's the definition of that service. So whenever, in this first loop or second loop, when we want to talk to the security OAuth service, we'll talk to it on /OAuth/token. Okay. So then that's the definition of your service, where it lives. Oh, and there's quite a few options here. I'm just going to show the implicit flow at the moment. And then where's our protected resource? So we want to protect /employee, everything after /employee. This is our actual path to our service. Of course, you can have many services and only protect some of them or just parts of them. That's that definition. Then here's the definition of our actual authentication. I chose to put the authentication into a file here just to make it simple. So there's the actual username as admin and the password's password. And that's over here we could have had a DB or a LDAP or anything like that that would hold the users. Let's just make it simple and say the users, but I chose to just keep it in the file. So that's that section dealing with that. And then here comes the token store. The token store is, once I generate a token, where do I put it? Currently I'm using the in-memory implementation, and it's this guy. I'm going to use in memory. So memory, okay. You could have put it in DB, you could have put it in LDAP, whatever you wanted to do, but I'm going to use it in memory because these two run on the same JVM and the server. So, but if I physically wanted to split my security OAuth service from my real service, I would probably put this in a database or a LDAP or something like that to share the two. Okay, so there's the actual that section that deals with where the token lives. And here comes token management. These are the type of services we provide. We'll do implicit, and we'll do refresh token, and we'll do password. And then here's my actual client definition. So I'm going to define this client, and I'm going to give a client the ID of my trusted client. The services or the grant types I will allow this client to do is password, authorization code, refresh token, implicit, which will be shown here, and redirect. Here's a few roles in here, which ties back to the actual authentication section at the top here. Role user. And then I'm going to say what rights does he have. He's trusted, he can read, he can write. And then the access token validity, I'm going to say the access token is valid for 30 seconds, and the refresh token is 600 seconds. That's what I'm configuring here. So I'm saying this token, in my case, this refresh token, I'm going to make that 600 seconds before you have to go get a new refresh token. And the access token, I'm going to make 30 seconds in this case. So after you get an access token, you have 30 seconds to actually do a transaction. So that's really what that comes down to. And that's it. It's implemented there. And that is now taken care of, implementing OAuth on top of my service. Note that I didn't change my service, I didn't change classes. To move from basic to this, I really just changed this one configuration file. My web configuration file loads that security file. So I went into this security file and replaced basic with OAuth. It's as simple as that, and I'm now going to run the project. Okay, so back then to my little test client. Now that it's started up, I can try and hit the service, but this time I get a new error. Oh, you know what, yeah, make sure that's clean. Yep, and I get, hey, you're not unauthorized. You can't use the service like this. So there's a list, and another was the HTML list, and all of them return you're unauthorized. So now we have to go through the loops, and the loops again are, we're going to send the authorization grant first loop, and we're going to get the refresh token back. So let's do that one, and then the authorization grant will send in the username and a password. So to do that, we are going to call our service on the following URL. There we go. And note that this is the first and only time that you will send your username password. So I'm going to go to local service, and I'm going to go to the service called OAuth token. And of course, this is this OAuth token. I'm going to go to the service, and I'm going to send in, I'm going to tell it that I'm going to be sending in a password, a username and a password. My ID is my trusted client. So in our configuration file, I will be referring to this client over here called my trusted client. That's the guy I am referring to in this call. And I'm going to say I will send in a username of Viv and a password of 123, but actually it should be admin and password. Okay, so there's my authorization grant. I will send in the request, and here comes the response. It gives me a temporary access token, which it says is valid for 29 seconds. We know we made it 30 seconds, but more importantly, it's given me this refresh token. So I'm going to take note of that refresh token. So that's first leg done. I sent in my username and my password, and I got my refresh token back. So now with my refresh token, I'm going to execute the second loop. I'm going to send in my refresh token, which is valid for 600 seconds, and I'm going to get an access token back. So that looks something similar to this. So let's just try and get that in there. So let's look at the URL again. So I'm again talking to the OAuth token service, which is this guy. My second loop talks to my security service. So I'm talking to the OAuth token service. I again say my trusted client. That's my ID. That's who I'm referencing. And I want to do my grant type. I want to do a refresh token. And my refresh token is this one, and you know, it starts with a 42 and ends with a A3. It's this token. I put it in there. So I'm going to send that request, and here comes my response back, and it says, this time it says it's a bearer token, and there is an access token. It says is valid for 29 seconds. I can ask for another one, and you'll see that that access token keeps changing. It keeps issuing me new tokens. So with this token now, I can go do the actual transaction. So we know that that token is valid for 30 seconds. So if I were to go to do the transaction, like before, I will call now the standard service. Again, this is the first time I'm doing loop 3 now. I'm sending my access token, but I'm now going to call my service, but I'm going to provide my access token. So here I go. This time I'm going to not OAuth, but I'm going to /employee. I'm going to ask for a list, and I'm going to just add this piece, question mark access token equals that 82, and that's this token I received. So when I send in that request, it says, sorry, you've waited too long. That token has actually expired. So I've waited longer than 30 seconds to actually do that. So we're going to try and do it a little bit quicker so that we're within the 30-second margin. So I'm going to go back then to loop number 2 where I will be providing I will call my OAuth, and I will be sending in my refresh token. I will be issued a new access token. So I went back to loop number 2, sent in refresh token, got a new access token, and this time, hopefully I can do this within 30 seconds. I'm going to try and do the transaction, but with a newly received access token, and when I send the transaction, there is my result like in the old days. So maybe this is now HTML list, and again, I've expired. I've waited more than 30 seconds. So that's really the whole loop. As I've first of all originally got a refresh token, and this token is pretty important because with this token I can generate many other tokens. So that's a great token to get. So once I got that token, I was able to generate an access token, and with the access token I was then able to actually do a transaction and do a result. So you know, that's sort of the flow. Okay, so again, to reiterate, we went first loop, we sent in username, password, we got a refresh token back. Using that refresh token, which is valid for 600 seconds, I again talked to the security service, and I got back an access token. With that access token valid for 30 seconds, I was able to call the service and get the result. This token expires in 30 seconds, and then I have to go back to loop number 2 and request a new access token before I can do number 3 and talk to the service directly. The only way to talk to the service directly is to have one of these. The only way to get one of these is to go through step 1, step 2, and step 3. So we're going to wait 600 seconds, and then I will show you the actual refresh token expiring. At the moment, the refresh token should not be expired yet. So if I go back to the request to receive a new refresh token, I should still be able to do that. I will send in that request, and again I'm getting a new access tokens. I'm keep generating new access tokens, and they are all fine. So let's wait a few minutes and see. Okay, it's been a few minutes, so let's try and do that. Get another send in our refresh token, and now we get the message back that sorry, the refresh token has expired, meaning loop number 2 now failed because the refresh token has reached its 600 seconds. Now the only way to now talk to the service is to go back to loop number 1, where we have to send in our username and password to get the refresh token. Again, with the refresh token we can generate the access token, and with the access token we can access the service. So that's the basic concept there. It's pretty simple. It's a lot more work, I would say, than you know, just basic authentication, but it's much more secure. One word of note is all of this needs to be done with SSL. OAuth 2 removed the you know, requirement, but you know, you should, all of us should happen via SSL. You should never do any of this without SSL in place. So all of these requests needs to come via SSL so that it's secured. So there's the 3 loops, and the security service and your own service as implemented, And again, there's your service. I didn't touch that. The only thing I did was change this configuration file, the Spring Security configuration file, and added the OAuth in there instead of basic. And that's about it. Of course, there's a lot more to this, but that's my quick implementation or quick definition or explanation of what's known as OAuth 2 implicit. Thank you very much.